Welcome friends to another r/prorevenge video. If you're a real YouTube pro, you'd know the best way to help support the content is to hit the like and subscribe buttons down below. That said, our first story of the day is by KudaGuy66. Manager says our delivery driver must be a cross-dresser since he has blue painted nails. Bet. So I work at auto parts store TM with Manager Bob. No one likes working with Manager Bob. He makes racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic, and otherwise inappropriate comments constantly. I'm one of the few workers who can stand working with him, as I ignore him, but even my patience has limits. Slight background, both myself and Bob are veterans. Him, Chair Force Reserves, myself being a Marine. We are both straight white male Christians, so I'm probably the only worker he has any respect for. So I'm on a closing shift with Bob and our delivery guy gets here. Bob notices his nails are painted blue. Bob decides he should tell me how he must be a cross-dresser or gay to have painted nails. I don't know, I zoned him out mostly as per usual. Petty revenge of the story? I'm closing with Bob tonight. I showed up with sparkly purple nail polish on. He hasn't been ignoring me, but he hasn't been going out of his way to talk to me either, which is highly unlike Bob. I think I like painting my nails, and will continue to do so. Apparently OP also clarified that later on, Bob later commented, "Really? You painted your nails?" and then gave a disappointed parent sigh. If you were in a position where you knew you could piss off a guy that is just totally judgmental over anybody just by painting your nails, would you do it just to tick them off? Let me know in the comments down below. Our next story is by Dizzy Bootsy. You're so naive, you can't take a newborn traveling. Being vague for reasons, I have a female relative. She's of the understanding that her way is the only way to do stuff. This is usually stated gently. She's not in your face about her opinions, but it's always there under the surface. I've lived a very different lifestyle to her, and she's always looked down on me for it. I didn't buy a house once I got married, nor did I rush headfirst into having children, divorced my first husband for reasons, and she very nicely told me she knew it wasn't going to last. But I was so stubborn, she knew there was no point telling me. Anyway, fast forward, I found a lovely person I wanted to marry again, and we did. He lives abroad and so I went to live with him. Ended up getting pregnant on the honeymoon. Fun times. When I was about 6 months, I wanted to visit my family, so I did. My female relative invited me to run some errands with her, and I stupidly said yes. We talked, and it was mostly pleasant. She had missed me, and to be fair, I had missed her. We started talking about plans for the future. I told her that we were planning some trips after the baby was born, and then my husband had an annual business trip to a different part of the continent about 3 months after the baby was born, and I was planning to go along with. What came out of her mouth was the most condescending thing I had ever heard her say. She, while driving, reached over, patted my stomach and said, "Oh, Dizzy, you're so naive to think you could travel with a newborn." The petty revenge? My baby was born in the May business trip in July. I traveled home in August. I'm not the usual one to take photos. I prefer to enjoy myself, but that business trip, I took so many photos and posted them in our family Facebook Messenger group. I took photos of me and the baby doing everything. My female relative then decided if I can do it, so can she. I've lived abroad for 7 years. She made the trip once with the tow of her children and my mom, and told me it's too hard and stressful. Now whenever we go anywhere, my phone comes out and I snap away. My child's a fantastic traveler, better than me. And my mom won't stop bragging to my female relative at how brave I am and how laid back my child is while traveling. Listen, if Sacagawea could take a newborn with her on the Lewis and Clark expeditions in 1805, a mother in the 21st century has no excuse. If they want to do it, it should be more than possible. This next story is by Just Say Jim, well worth a $10 ad. I own a staffing company. Last year, I was using a payday app to pay a staffer around $200 for a few gigs. When I tapped her name, I accidentally tapped 2 other staffers' names. I didn't notice and I hit pay, sending money to all 3 people. I noticed it and sent them a text asking for it back. One girl laughed and sent it right back. I sent her $20 for her trouble and honesty. The other person never returned my text. This year, I placed an ad for an event and the same thief replied to it. I was dumbfounded but amazed by the balls on this guy. I quickly placed a dummy ad with a different email account that I use only when I buy things online. He replied, and I sold him a story about a gig 90 miles away that would pay nearly twice what my real gig would pay. So last Friday, he woke up early, got dressed for work, and drove 90 miles and back for no reason at all. Screw you, pal. I mean, it's kinda painful even though you did get some very good revenge. Having to cover $210 for all that, there's still a little bit of pain there. Our next story is by SkinMid-Ick. Bad roommate doesn't help with any household chores, so I make the honey jar lid so tight they can't open it without help. The roommate has taken advantage of the kindness of everyone in the house and is a manipulative runt who lies. Their favorite snack has honey in it. They always leave the jar covered in honey and they leave the lid really loose. There's also something in the honey now from their cross-contamination. So now, after I use some honey, I put the lid on extremely tight. I'm one of those people who has never met a jar I couldn't open, so that stuff is tight. Roommate literally cannot eat their favorite snack without someone's help. I know this because I watched them struggle with the jar for a long time before ultimately giving up. If somebody's gonna be a jerk about what they eat and how they eat it and the condition they leave things in, I definitely have no remorse for people who kind of make it hard to access that stuff. If it's a communal thing, they kind of don't deserve to have access to it, in my opinion. Our next story is by Remarkable Fudge 1228. Bully me and my friends, I'll poison you. Okay, poison is technically not the correct term, but I still ruined this guy's day. Anyway, I go to a relatively rich high school, the fancy kind where professionals learn and all that kind of stuff, and because of that, most of the students get good grades. But because of this, some kids think that they're just better than others, especially the main villain of the story, let's call him Kevin. Kevin thought that just because he was a top student, he was God's gift to mankind, and he frequently tormented me and my friends because of it. His parents never believed the bullying accusations, and the teachers didn't really care, so he always got away with it with no trouble. That was until recently. You see, my mother had bought electric toothbrushes for the both of us, and with that order came a few other things. One of these things was a bag of pills. They were basically meant to be toothpaste, but we didn't use them that much. All you had to do to use them was put one in your mouth, break it, and use some water and boom, you get a similar effect to toothpaste. However, this pill has an awful taste if you don't use water or just try to eat it. I think you can see where this is going. I took 2 pills and put them in some sweets I have in my backpack. I carry some with me for when I'm bored or just need a quick energy boost, and waited for my plan to go into action. For a few days, I was just sitting in my seat and eating some sweets, waiting for Kevin to strike, but he didn't. Until yesterday, that is. Yesterday, he barged into the classroom filled with pride and noticed me just having a snack. He came over to me and asked in his friendliest voice if he could have some. I declined, saying that I had brought the snacks for myself and not him. This set him off and he got close to my face, telling me that he didn't care, that he and his friends had just had a hard football training session, and that they were only looking for something nice after a hard day. I looked at him, smiled, and said, "If you say so." I rummaged through my bag to find the chocolate sweet that I had filled with pills and gave it to him. He took it and marched back to his seat. When the lesson began, our teacher entered the room and started writing down who was and wasn't in the class. While she's writing that down, I hear a loud "ugh" at the back of the class. I turn to look and see Kevin coughing and holding his hands in front of his mouth, trying not to vomit. He runs out of the classroom and a few minutes later returns, sits down, and says nothing for the remainder of the class. I guess revenge is pretty sweet after all. I mean, yeah, if you got somebody that is bullying you and taking your food, adding a little acidity or disgusting extra seasoning of sorts, honestly isn't the worst idea as long as it isn't actual poison. Just make them regret eating the food, not want to go to the hospital because they eat the food. This next story is by user account disabled. Enjoy the 1,200-mile drive. I was living in an apartment in California and had a really terrible neighbor. Super noisy, let her toddler run around unsupervised. I once saw the kid run in the street. One day she shows up at my door and asks if I've seen her pet ferret, which is illegal to keep as a pet in that state. I called animal control. Officer shows up, tells her she has to get rid of the rodent. She says she'll take it to her sister in Oregon. Officer wrote her a ticket, told her to get it signed by animal control in Oregon within 30 days, proving she took the ferret there. Enjoy the drive, 1,200-mile round trip. In this situation with a really annoying neighbor, I get why OP did what they did, but as a real lover of animals and ferrets, I would never be able to justify doing that. Maybe the only way I could justify that is if they were noticeably being a bad caretaker for the ferret. Our next story is by That's Fishy, You're Fishy. Cut me off? I'll make you wait. I'm a rideshare driver. I was driving in the parking lot of a strip mall with a passenger who had a stop at a liquor store there. I was at a T-junction kind of thing in the parking lot going straight when a car that should have stopped until I passed and then turned comes flying by and cuts me off with her turn. Turns out she was going to the liquor store too. I parked right beside her on the left, and my passenger getting out first prevented her from getting out until the passenger reached the sidewalk in front of the store. The other driver was visibly angry, gave me a little chuckle. This is definitely a lot more on the petty side, but somebody who's overly in a rush, making them have to stop and just wait and think, that is honestly pretty satisfying. Being able to just stroll by or sit there as the passenger got out and just make a little subtle eye contact, let that judging go on between the two, pretty satisfying, not gonna lie. Our next story is by Wood and Weld, Move the Trailer. Years ago, I worked at a cabinet shop. I went on an install with the owner, and when we came back, he parked the empty trailer close to the dumpster. No reason in particular, there was just space there, so that's where they left it. The next morning, I come into work and Jerry, not his real name, comes up to me looking pissed about something. Nothing new, he was always sort of a grumpy old fella. The conversation went something similar to below. 18 years ago, so I don't remember exactly. Jerry says, "Did you park the trailer there by the dumpster?" I say, "No, the owner drove yesterday." Jerry says, "You can't park that trailer there, then I can't get to the dumpster." I say, "I didn't park it there, the owner did, but I can move it." Jerry says, "I don't know why you would park that trailer there, you know we need to have access to the dumpster." I say, "But I didn't park it there, why don't you talk to the owner about it?" Jerry says, "Blah blah blah, your fault, darn kids have no respect, blah blah blah." I say, "It was not me." The conversation continued in that manner for several minutes, with him berating me for leaving the trailer in that way that I didn't leave in the way. From that day forward, until I left that cabinet shop a couple years later, anytime I'd worked late, which was more often than not, and the 5x8 trailer was at the shop, I'd pick up the tongue and roll it right up to the dumpster for Jerry to find in the morning. If you stand there and you know you're not guilty and this guy just will refuse to just listen to you at all, no matter what you do, it will never change this guy's opinion, then I don't blame OP for being like, "Alright, fine, I'll take ownership of being that guy and just upset you every single time that I can now." It's kind of weird because it's almost like admitting guilt for doing the thing in the first place, but if it frustrates the guy, it's a little bit of a payback. And our final story of the day is by Patty Cake. Lots of opportunities for petty revenge in marriage. Try this one out. My wife and I have been married for 25 years. Happily, I might add. There are, however, things that annoy you in every marriage. For me, one of which is my wife's inability, or lack of motivation at least, to put a new toilet paper roll back on the dispenser. In the part of our master bath where the toilet is, as you sit and do your business, the TP hanger's on your right, and the edge of the tub is equidistant on the left. For some reason, when my wife has to grab a new roll, she always leaves it on the edge of the tub rather than hanging it. If left there, she'll continue to use that roll, always returning it to the side of the tub. I fixed it thousands of times over the last 18 years living in this house. I've made all the passive comments, jokingly of course, as she's the love of my life. Recently, I came up with a new strategy. Now, every time I go in there and the TP roll is sitting on the tub, I put it on the dispenser, but now I put it with the paper coming out from underneath rather than over the top. It's the wrong way, and I'll argue that till my death. She absolutely hates it that way. Funny thing though is that my wife has started to put the roll on the dispenser when it runs out. Most of the time at least. When she doesn't, I just repeat the wrong type of install as a reminder. I can definitely imagine living in close quarters with somebody for an extended period of time. There's gonna be these little quirks and things that are probably a little contentious from both sides. So the great toilet paper debacle is no real surprise to me. Sometimes the quietest, slightly annoying thing is all you really need to really push them in the right direction. Whatever OP's doing, it seems to be working because they said the wife started to put the roll on the dispenser. Just continue to be that gentle, slightly annoying reminder. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So of all these stories I've read today, which is your favorite and why? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you haven't yet, if you could like and subscribe, that would mean a lot to me. Whatever you do, whether it's liking, subscribing, turning notifications on, all of it helps grow this channel and I appreciate the heck out of it. So until next time, I'll see you all tomorrow with some more stories.